Dustin Biddle, I appreciate you joining me today.
Absolutely.
We were just talking and figured out that we've only been knowing each other since 2019, but it feels a lot longer.
It has. It has for sure, man. Yeah.
So when we first met, you didn't have twins. COVID had hit.
Yeah.
And you and I have partnered and lived through all that
Yeah, absolutely.
while also delivering projects.
Indeed.
All right, so let's go back. 2019. When do we meet? Like, what's our first interaction? I can't even remember.
Yeah. So I was working in the MarTech space, and we were looking to expand in our portfolio. So we were looking for getting some contract help to kind of come in and lead some of our initiatives. And so I was shopping around internally for individuals who potentially were maybe rolling off of a project that had good rapport or recommendations within the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your name came up. Your name came up as someone to connect with. Oh, you got to connect to Chuck, right? So I remember us sitting down in a little cafe together, right? And me being like, oh, what's going on with your schedule, right? And
Yep.
we were kind of fishing out some projects because I was just looking for strong leaders to kind of help lead some stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I get involved with loyalty upgrade number 2 because I've done 3 at this client. And so this is the second of 3. And at the time, you're managing that work stream mainly. And so kind of like paint the picture of the landscape here. We got multiple vendors and players internally. Like paint the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a fun one, right? So let's talk about loyalty just for a moment,
Yeah.
right? Within any organization. We're talking many teams, about 20 teams, I think it was, including, some external vendors. We have operational teams, and we have many IT teams, right? So loyalty is, kind of an expansive project together, right? So it's not just, an IT initiative as much as it is a kind of a culture changing thing, right? So, when we kind of connected together, I was looking for some help to kind of lead some of these big chunks of this body of work, right? And, it was an interesting time for us, right? Because we talk about COVID and how that impacted the way we worked and
Yep.
and the aspects of that, how crazy that was to go through that, right? So we had started together kind of down one path talking about, kind of some marketing projects together, but then we kind of settled in on, kind of some of your timing, your availability to kind of pick some stuff up. And then you brought up my twins, right? It was,
Yes.
I had a need for a strong leader, right? And what was interesting about the need for you, Chuck, was that I needed you to be more than just someone who's executing on the project, right? And you needed to manage a lot of leadership expectations, right? And we talk about just the complexities that come with managing up as much as managing down, right?
Sure.
So, fun times, right? So the boys were born in February. We've connected, I think it was in the early fall, just kind of lining up.
Yep.
And I remember going in December. I remember this. It was December, it was around Christmas time, and I said, "Okay, Chuck, I have this thing for you. It's massive, right? It's massive, and I've got 30 days to give you all that I can give you to
Yep.
pick this thing up and run, right? And by the way, I'm going dark on you, right?
I remember this conversation.
This is classic situations,
Yep.
right?
And it truly was 30 days of just drinking through the fire holes.
Yep.
It was right. Like, who were all the players? The vendor had multiple players within them even. Because they had their reporting teams, and they had a SME and a lead in that space. They had a SME and a lead in the QA space. They had a SME / lead. What else do they have? In the actual development space too, right? So multiple work streams there. To your point, the managing up piece, right? So how are we reporting it out? How are we managing these leads that manage teams? To your point, there were 20 different teams involved. How we handle the change management on the on the client side, how we manage that change. I'm just thinking of all the different things that were going into it. And then once we got kind of the ship running very smooth and, we have metrics in place and reporting, it became this implementation is massive.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really massive. It was an iceberg. It was huge.
And we started planning around that. And I mean, what was it? 2-week implementation plan. And what's the communication cadence look like? Who's on point, right? We're running rotations through the night. I mean, it was kind of wild. We're managing. I would say I was even doing some of it from, afar because, there's vacation times planned. And to your point, like, life's happening. People are having new life in their life. Everybody's got life on top of the work, and we're all like collectively saying for 2 weeks, how are we managing this massive implementation?
Yeah. And let's not forget the teams, the people that we had to interact with, right? You had a lot of managers, you had a lot of, I would call managers in time for the project, right? And so you had a lot of decision makers who were either empowered or delegated to that role. So they were new to their role too. So not only were you engaging in management of all of this exercise, right? But you had to kind of coach them along in their interactions as well, right? And that's a layer on top, right? It's like that. It was and then mix in COVID, right? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Right? We were, we were figuring out together what that means to be remote during all of this. We had, lots of technology, right, that had constraints and stuff we had to work through. Yeah, you were a busy man. I know. I kind of remember going dark and coming back and going, okay, how we doing? And, and things were moving along, right? Things were, everybody was jiving, right? And you had control of it.
Yeah.
And we, kind of happily rode the ship into the harbor together in the end. And it was awesome.
Yeah, no, it was a very unique situation to come in midstream. Like you said, you're in place, you're supporting the project, but you also have life happening. And so you're specifically finding, sourcing someone to be you in your absence, right? And to your point, like you're downloading all these different factors and saying, I need you to run this ship in my absence so I can go do these things that are important, my life, right?
Yeah.
And then come back and then not be a total train wreck.
Yes.
Right?
And let's talk about the timing in which you came in, right?
Okay.
So if you think about the management of that engagement, right? You were in some of the most complex time getting prepared for go live, right? Getting everybody checking those boxes, making sure the playbooks were in place and stuff like that. It's no easy feat.
No.
Right?
No.
There were new tools to be developed and used for that time within there, right? And there wasn't a whole lot of prep we could have done, right? Because that's where we had to engage together, right? And so to hand something that was a very passionate project about, it's something that I had and my leadership were engaged with, to hand over to you, and to have the trust, right, to keep that ship alive. That's, if it goes wrong, it goes wrong for many people, and
Right.
it's very, very complicated. And that's not something you can, forgive me, but just grab any random, individual off the street and say, here, run this ship, right?
Right.
That's complex.
So you brought up trust, and at the time you were newish to the organization. How long had you been in the role at that point?
Oh gosh, Chuck, I want to say about a year, maybe.
About a year. Okay, that sounds about right. And the whole time, like your primary focus was this upgrade. I mean, everything was kind of leading up to this, amongst other MarTech
Yes,
issues, right? But
absolutely.
this was the big dog for that year.
Yes.
On top of that, I feel like your leadership was newish in role, maybe 3 months, 4 months ahead of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Two.
Right. And at the time, I want to say these were like the big dogs in the IT portfolio for that client, for that organization, for that time period, right? Let's talk a little bit about, because you mentioned this earlier, people at that organization recommended me to you in your leadership, right? So you don't know me at this point.
Absolutely.
So talk about like the moment when you knew you could trust me to manage this in your absence, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, so first we start with the referral, right? Here, getting some feedback. What has he done, to prove this value, right? And kind of soliciting that feedback from peers was like, he's taken over some rather difficult initiatives, and a lot of the feedback came from kind of e-commerce and the e-commerce world, right? And so, e-commerce is a tricky beast into itself because it's not linear, right? There's lots of paths that go forward, and there's lots of dependencies. Well, that's exactly what we needed. We needed someone who can be dynamic and roll, right? And not just drive those three kind of pillars of project, budget, and scope, but someone that can understand the chemistry and everybody involved. And so that was very important to me. So, kind of taking that feedback, right? And we sat down and kind of talked about, what did you want? What was important to you? And I remember you initially being like, oh, we'll see. Right? But that's good. That tells me that somebody that's not desperate. somebody's desperate. It's like, yeah, I'll take anything, right? And so the fact that you could, bring that, I want this to be right for me as much as I want it to be right for you. That's awesome. That was awesome. That tells me, okay, this guy selects what he wants to engage with, right? And so there's some power behind that, right? And so I thought that was really cool. From there we just kind of sat down and it was a little bit of a leap of faith, right? I've not known you, and so we got to December, and I kind of said, here's what I have to hand to you to take over and pick up, right? But I think you were jumping in, you were challenging questions, you were diving in. I engaged my leadership to say, okay, I'm trusting this guy. Do we all trust this guy? And everybody was resounding, yep, we do, and the presence is there, and the rest is history. Really.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
It's funny because I vaguely remember this conversation, but that is my approach to most work. Is I'm selective with clients as much as they are with me, right? And it's one of those things where I want to make sure that the work is something that I'm passionate about, and there's a challenge, a problem to solve. That's a big thing for me. Is I feel like you can hire anybody to do run-of-the-mill standard issue projects, right? I want the big dog challenges. I want the exposure. I want the complexity, because basically it makes it fun to get up and every day and go do that, right? And I want to make sure that the people I'm working with also have similar mindsets towards we want to solve problems, more so than just talking about it, but actually accomplishing those goals. So this has been fun exercise, getting feedback from clients, because this is unscripted, right? Like, so, people are remembering key moments, key things that stuck out. And that's exactly the goal of all this, is to really talk about what the differentiation is between my product and other consulting firms and their products as well. So I'm glad you brought that up. It is my approach towards things.
That's awesome.
Yeah. This is great.
Yeah.
So last thing I want to talk about is, okay, so implementation goes off, from a trust factor, from a leadership factor. Like, what was kind of the mindset post go live and implementation? Like, what was the mindset pushing forward?
Yeah. I recall me and Charlie like, all right, Chuck, what do you move on to next, right? What's next? Let's find that next thing together, right? So, that was not an easy ship. We went through, kind of a fast handoff. We went through COVID, right? We went through a very complex project that was if you remember, it was the only project, because everything else across the enterprise portfolio, because of COVID and preserving funding and so forth, it was the only project so everybody was focused on that, right? And so we talk about trust. That's I mean, the stakes don't get bigger than that.
Right,
they really don't. We had success. We had crazy success. And I remember getting feedback and kind of doing some post-analysis and saying, how was everybody's perception of the execution, during critical times, and just the buy-in and all that kind of stuff. And everybody had nothing but great things to say. So, I mean, to me, it was easy. It's like, all right, Chuck, what do you got going on next, man? Let's figure out that next big fish, right? And so, that's where our relationship's been ever since, right? It's like, let's figure out a jive together again, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's perfect. And that's what I love to hear is, for the folks that hire me within their organization, I want them to shine. I want them to, I want that big initiative that everybody's eyes are on to go off without a hitch. And then, to your point, you're going to call me for more work so that we can jive together. I like the way that you said it, so that we can jive together again, because, again, if you had asked me prior to us just figuring it out before this interview, I would have said we've worked together for 10, 20 years.
Yeah, right.
I can't believe it's only been since 2019. Like, honestly, saying that out loud, like, really? Because we jive together very well, and we've had some great, like, even when we haven't been on the exact same work stream together, but I've been at the same client, and there's crossover. Again, we have a great working relationship. So, no, I appreciate you sharing your insights, your thoughts, your experiences, and being able to share that with the broader audience.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.